96.5 CTG, the original 70s soundtrack. Alan Barnes here with Mr. Mark Farner, the legendary singer, guitar player, principal songwriter from the uber ultimate cool arena rock band from the 70s, Grand Funk Railroad. How you doing, Mark?
Good, brother Alan. Good to be here with you.
Well, first things first, but we all want to know how Jesse, your son, is doing.
Jesse is hanging in there. He's, from having no movement to the movement that he has right now, that is a gain. And we count every centimeter as a gain in what we're shooting for to rehabilitate him. With the prayers that have been, he's floating on prayers. I mean, that have been offered for this kid. And I thank God that I do have the popularity that I do have in the music industry to solicit prayers for my 22-year-old son, because we love him that much, and as much as any parent would. And so I appreciate the opportunity for people in your listening audience to hear and know that we are in need of that.
Sure. And just for our listeners who don't know, your son Jesse was, I guess was he in an accident, or did he fall down last summer?
No, he was out camping with his friends, and they were backflipping off a picnic table, and he landed on his head.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. Jesse is definitely healthier than somebody who, at this stage of the game, according to the head physician at Beaumont Hospital in Detroit, that the neurosurgeon, most people are deteriorated pretty badly.
Right.
And Jesse isn't. That's because of the prayers, I believe. And that just even furthers my conviction about more prayer, more prayer.
Sure. And speaking of people who've offered to help, I think you just got back from, New York City last week, and there was a benefit concert at B.B. King's House of Blues?
Yeah, well, at B.B. King's in New York City, Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp used the last night of their camp to also promote a benefit concert for Jesse. And Roger Daltrey was there from the Who, Three Doors Down was there, Cliff Williams from AC/DC, Rudy Sarzo, Kip Winger, people from, the Beach Boys, Joan Jett and the Blackheart. I mean, these are
Sure.
musicians, that are just very sensitive human beings that have a heart to group together and do something and show love. And that's what I felt, and it was so overwhelming. And I wish Jesse could have been there to experience the love. It was just waves and waves and waves of emotion from the audience, and it
Wow.
was sold out. And
Wow,
it was
that's
some
really
great
cool.
music. We rocked. Man, did we rock. It was fun.
I can't even imagine how cool that would have been.
Right on, Alan.
Speaking of rock, we all know the story, but not everybody does. Tell us a little bit about how you got started with Grand Funk Railroad.
Garage band. Had been, knocking around in different bands from the time I was actually 15 when I started playing guitar, 20 when Grand Funk sold our first million-selling
Wow.
album. So it happened really fast.
Well, you guys had like a legendary start in that. I mean, you guys obviously were just a garage band out of Flint, Michigan, and I guess Terry Knight booked you guys at the Atlanta Pop Festival, totally unsigned. 100,000 people or something?
185,000
Woo!
people. And it was such a shock to walk up on that stage, which the stage was 20 feet in the air. And prior to that, we were on ground level. And when we'd look out, all we would see is the first few rows,
Oh, so you had no clue.
Until we had the advantage of going up the stairs and looking out over this audience, we had no clue as to the vastness and to, it was, it was stepping into a movie scene. But there is something to be said about the synergy of the entire audience that has the same thought simultaneously, and the band gets to receive that.
Sure.
That is a real good feeling.
Did why is it, I mean, obviously you guys, when I think of Grand Funk, I think of it, what a great people's band, Midwest, good solid values. The critics, some of my favorite bands over the years have been the ones that the critics just did not like. What do you think it was with the critics and their, I don't want to use the word hatred of Grand Funk Railroad, but they were really tough on you guys.
Yeah, they were tough on us, but I think part of it
But despite all the critics and I guess that was a calculated backlash in some ways. I mean, you guys had the ultimate last laugh in that. I mean, what a people's band. I mean, the you weren't really doing singles so much as selling millions and millions of records before the long playing album was really the bread and butter of the industry. It was still sort of in transformation from singles to albums, and you guys were just like shooting off like a rocket ship even by the time the Red album came out. I think was that your first gold or?
Yes, that was the first goal. And as you remember, the Vietnam War was in swing, and we wanted it to stop because we had lost too many of our loved ones. And I wrote the song "People Let's Stop the War." It was stuff like that that communicated to the audience a consciousness, it's a prick of the heart. It should cause us. I mean, I think it's terrible when a rock star gets more coverage than a soldier. A rock star
Sure.
could die, and it goes on and on for months and months, and they just wring it out. And what happens when a soldier lays down his life? I mean, it's just so topsy-turvy. It doesn't make any sense.
And of course, I think they sort of, I'd read somewhere too that they sort of adopted the song "Closer to Home" as as sort of a war anthem, to sort of help keep them focused until they could get home.
Yep. And even people in the current conflict have told me that's their barracks, that's their song.
Right.
It is. That they want to be closer to home, brother.
Around that time, was that the infamous billboard? When did that pop out?
That was 71. This billboard that was in Times Square that took up the entire block, one entire block. It was for rent. Of course, it was like $50,000 a month.
Ooh.
Jerry Knight said we need to put, the bases up there closer to home and promote this in New York City. We just, okay, let's do that. So we put it up there. Well, the billboard workers go on strike. It's up an additional, I don't know how many months for free. We were living in New York City as far as that goes. And then we have the concert that sells out faster than the Beatles. It's just the way it was supposed to be, brother.
Shea Stadium, yeah. It's I think I read a quote from you somewhere, and I don't. You can't really get us into that helicopter, but I mean, just describe. I mean, because you guys sort of choppered into a parking lot adjacent to the stadium. What does that feel like when you saw those people and you thought, "Holy moly, they're here for us"?
Yeah, and the place was bouncing. I'm telling you, physically up and down. You could see the bleachers. The kids were just. I'm telling you, it was rocking. Humble Pie was on base, second base, where the stage was set up, and the relationship, you could see they had that audience just keyed right up and going for it. And, this was back when it was Stevie Marriott and Peter
Frampton, yeah.
Jerry Shirley, the original guys, and they rocked. That band just flat out rocked. So, landing in the parking lot, there was no limo, and the guy that was with us made a run down to the phone booth at the corner because this was before cell phones. He made a call on the payphone, and within 3 minutes, we had police cars with lights and sirens going. We jump in and enter into Shea Stadium in cop cars, and we got out. The audience went nuts.
I bet. So, I mean, that's like the ultimate Spinal Tap moment. You guys chopper in, and then you touch down on the ground, and there's no car waiting for you. No cell phones or anything either. You can't text somebody and say, dude, send a car. Of course, like, you sold out. People don't have the true perspective on it, but you guys sold that thing out in something like 72 hours. And what people don't really grasp is that was before Ticketmaster and online ticket sales. I mean, that was all the old-fashioned way, calling the box office, standing in line.
Yes, and camping out. They camped in tents on the lawn of Shea Stadium. I saw pictures of it. It was amazing. That's why Grand Funk is not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Are you kidding me? If it was for the amount of records we sold, we'd have been there years ago.
Oh yeah, you didn't want to get me started on that. There's so many bands that I love that continue to get snubbed. It's just amazing. I don't know what they're thinking over there. But you're the green guitar is there, right?
Well, it was there, alternative route. When Brewer removed some of the stuff from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and that went with it, and my attorney finally tracked it down and had it. I have it in my possession at our farm in Michigan now.
That's good.
But Rock and Roll Hall of Fame had it for years, but we're not there, but we are mentioned, and we've gone and done promotions even for them, trying to,
Raise money. Yeah, I'd seen that. Some of the people that I see, they get in, I mean, obviously, like Critics' Darlings, and I can't think of anybody specifically that I found offensive, but you'd see some band that, like Television or Roxy Music, that no one really, I'm not going to say no one listened to them or they weren't important, but they weren't big bands. And then,
Right.
and then to go on past rock and roll and to put just plain either R&B or disco or pop groups in there, I don't know. To me, rock and roll is a certain thing, and it's not some of those people that have gotten into the Hall of Fame.
Right on, brother. I'm with you.
Well, when you guys, of course, like I say, you guys got huge, and other than really Closer to Home and a couple of, there weren't any big singles. And was that about the time that you parted ways with Terry Knight sometime?
We were forced into a compromise with the Infernal Revenue Service, and they told us that we owed like $400,000. Should have had our own representation, but we were 20 years old. My mother had to sign the contract, man. I wasn't 21 yet. But we were sitting in the attorney's office. They bring us this problem, and they say, and we will loan you the money to pay this debt off if you'll sign another 3-year contract. I walked over to the attorney's chair, sat down behind this desk. First, I kicked my feet up there, and I'm thinking. And I sat up, and as I sat up, I grabbed the desk because the chair was kind of back, and so I reached up, and the drawer came open then, and the big drawer underneath there, and as I pulled myself up, I look, here's this contract between Capitol Records and Goodnight Productions.
Right.
For 16%, and he's been telling us the 6% that he was giving the band was more than the Beatles got, and we didn't know what he was getting. But it's the same story that a lot of the guys from the same era are singing today, because there were shysters that just
Oh, sure. Yeah, we're getting ready to talk to Tommy James in a couple of weeks, and it's in his book, Music and the Mob and Me. It details it's and it's the same thing, and I'm sure it still happens today. Everybody wants to get that record deal, and they'll sign anything without even realizing. So basically, you guys reset to zero cash flow wise at that point, didn't you? I mean, did you feel like it was probably over, or because what I'm leading up to is obviously what I call the Phoenix era, is where you guys sort of rose up from the ashes, and then you had success that just blew away your previous success.
We were doing it was a charity at Madison Square Garden where it was 3 nights back to back, and we gave the money for the drug rehabilitation houses. That concert almost got stopped by Terry Knight because they came and tried to confiscate our equipment.
Yeah.
And we were doing this, man. It was the most low-down thing. But we just, luckily, our guys, the crew that worked for Grand Funk, they were like Vikings. They were huge guys.
Yeah.
And they walked over and they said, "You're going to what?" And they're looking down at these guys going, "You guys going to have to scram." They ushered them out of there.
Road crew guys are like pirates. They're like some of the best people on earth. They do a hard job, and for not a lot of money, but those guys most of the time they got your back.
It's what we believe in. We still believe in the music. The music still communicates. It got so sterile, Alan. I wouldn't even listen to radio. It's so sterile.
I don't, except my own show, of course.
I hear you.
But we do the 70s, so it's a little more organic than that.